What is going on, guys? Dakota here, and welcome back to the Driven Mad channel. So in today's video, what I thought we'd do is kind of take a look at the Bronco and the Wrangler, both the two-door ones, and compare them, which is better on-road and which is better at being a daily driver. You know, obviously, as much as I'd love to sit here and tell you guys that I have both my vehicles, or all my vehicles, I guess, off-road all the time, that's just not true. So as much as I'd love it to be, but most people do use these as their daily drivers. They take them back and forth to work, they use them on the road, and when you're going to a trail, you do usually end up driving there on a road. So I feel like it'd be a pretty relevant test to talk about, and so we're gonna hop in the Bronco and go from there. All right, guys, so I feel like the very first thing we should talk about when it comes to daily driving is comfort level. You know, how comfortable are both vehicles? And this one should be pretty easy, and most of you guys should be able to decide which one's gonna be better here. The Bronco, with its longer wheelbase, so the bumps are a little bit more spaced out from hitting the suspension, and with the Bronco's independent front suspension, the Bronco does ride better than the Wrangler. Now, I know there are gonna be comments saying, "Oh, but the Wrangler isn't bad." You're right. New JL Wranglers are nowhere near as bad as getting in, say, like a 2001 TJ. They're a lot better, but that doesn't mean that they're as good as the Bronco. So while the Wrangler is not as bad as everyone makes it out to be, the Bronco is by far and away the better vehicle when it comes to ride and handling. The ride quality is just a lot better when it goes over uneven bumps. The independent front suspension handles it a lot better. When you're cruising on the highway at 75 miles an hour and you smack a bump, the thing doesn't get as unsettled as a Wrangler would. It's a bit more firmly planted and gives you a little bit more confidence. And the seats themselves, while we're talking about comfort, are more comfortable. They give you a little bit more support in the back. They're and they have a bit more padding in them, so they feel a lot better. When you're sitting in traffic for an hour, or when you're going on a long road trip, that matters. And you get a little bit less vibration from the vehicle, so it's less fatiguing. When it comes to comfort levels and everything, the Bronco is better. And now, while we're talking about driving, obviously the main thing about driving is steering. So how is the steering? And again, I know people are gonna say that the Wrangler isn't as bad, which I agree. It's not as bad as people make it out to be, but the steering is objectively better in the Bronco. It's more traditional, it's rack and pinion as opposed to the recirculating ball in the Wrangler. And so it's more what most people are used to. You know, if you go and get in a Tahoe or something, it's gonna feel very similar to this. It's a lot more direct. There's not as much slop and play like there is in the Wrangler, and you can let go of the wheel, and it's gonna track a little more straight than the Wrangler would. So, and the steering itself is very light, super easy to move around. So when it comes to steering, the Bronco is better there. The next thing that we should talk about when we're talking about daily driving is noise. How loud is the vehicle that you're in? You know, do you hear wind noise, road noise, tire noise? And in the Bronco's case, it's all of the above. So I want to kind of point this out. No disrespect to any like automotive journalists or anything, but when you guys watch automotive journalists, you got to take what they say with a grain of salt, because sometimes it's been 6 months since they've driven a vehicle that they're trying to make a comparison to. So I'll give you an example. I watched a video and someone was like, yeah, the wind noise is about the same as what you'd get in a Wrangler. False. If some of you guys know from watching my channel, I've had my JL Wrangler now for over 3 years. Had the 392 now for a couple of months. And the Bronco is hands down, it's louder. There's no getting away from it. It's louder in every sense of the word, except for engine. You hear more road noise, you hear more tire noise, which could be down to tires, so you can change that, but still. And you hear more wind noise. Now, I think part of why you hear more wind noise is because on the sides here, they have those little gaps where you can install a roof rack. So I think the air kind of hits that and kind of wisps around those. And then there's also just a bunch of little like lines in there that you would think might be like rain channels or something, but the way they're positioned, it's not. So not really sure. But when it comes to which one is quieter, if you're on the smoothest road in the world and you're at 70 miles an hour, which one is going to be louder? It's the Bronco. The Wrangler is definitely quieter, which just surprised me, considering that this has a curved windshield and the windshield doesn't fold down, like it's fixed in place. So if you're wanting the quietest vehicle out of the two from the factory, the Wrangler is the quieter of the two. And we can't talk about daily driving without talking about how it accelerates. So when it comes to powertrains, again, since we're comparing just two doors, the Wrangler can only be had with the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder or a 3.6-liter naturally aspirated V6. I'm going to compare the V6s since I have both of those, and the Bronco can be had with a twin turbo V6 like what's in here. You can only get it at the moment with a 10-speed automatic. V6 to V6, when you're talking about merging onto the highway and stop and go traffic, just getting up to speed, or towing a small load behind you, whether you're towing dirt bikes or jet skis, I mean, there's no getting away from it. The Bronco has way more power and torque, and way more low-end torque. That's one of the things that the Jeep would be perfectly adequate, but they put all the power and the torque, they tuned it to where it's all at the top of the RPMs. No one, at least I don't know a single person who drives a Jeep like it's a GT3, where you want to rev it out, because it's not a very good sounding engine, doesn't make a whole lot of power, and it's not fast. So like having all that power at the top of the RPM range doesn't really do much. In the Bronco, it's available much lower. Peak torque in this is, I believe it's 410 pound-feet of torque. Peak torque in the Wrangler is 269. So it's a huge difference in torque numbers. And again, it's available a lot lower down in the day-to-day driving range. So when you're merging onto the highway, this gets up to speed with the 35s. And again, this is a Sasquatch package, so with the 4.7 final drive ratio, this gets up to speed easily. I mean, you're not having to get your foot in it to get up to 70 miles an hour. It gets up there very easily. And when it comes to passing power on the highway, it's got plenty of power. So when it comes to which one is easier to get to speed, easier to maintain speed, easier to pass, the Bronco definitely wins. It just has more horsepower and torque. While we're talking about engine and powertrains, let's talk about throttle response and braking. So throttle response on the Bronco is a bit sharper than the Wrangler. You don't have to put your foot in it as much to get the response you're looking for, which is nice. However, on the flip side, the brake pedal, just flat out, I don't like the brakes. It feels like you're stepping on a sponge. You get no real feel, and it's not progressive. It's just nothing, still climbing. Okay, now we're slowing down. Oh, suddenly the ABS is on. And that's not very confidence inspiring when you're driving on the highway at 75 miles an hour and you need to brake quickly, or when you're just in stop and go traffic and you're trying to modulate the braking. It's harder to modulate than the Wrangler. The Wrangler is a lot more progressive. It gives you feel as you push further in the pedal. It gets a lot firmer. The Bronco is basically, it doesn't really get firm until you're already in the ABS, and by that time you're already in the ABS, so it doesn't matter. So when it comes to braking, and which is going to be easier to modulate whether you're in traffic and whatnot, the Wrangler has a much better brake feel. And quite honestly, it feels like even the brakes themselves, when it comes to just stopping power, is better. So, keep that in mind if that's something that you're interested in. And we can't talk about powertrain and throttle and braking without talking about fuel economy. So, if you guys want, I'll make a separate fuel economy, testing it out to see kind of what we can get, but just leave a comment down below and let me know. Just so far, having daily driven both, the Bronco, I read a lot of reviews saying that the Bronco didn't get very good gas mileage. Compared to my Jeep with 35s and even bone stock, this gets better gas mileage than my Jeep does on the highway, or I'd say on average about 1 to 2.5 miles to gallon better than the Wrangler. It goes further on a tank, which is odd considering that if you check Ford's website, it says that this has a 16.3 gallon fuel tank as opposed to a 17.5 gallon fuel tank. So this is a smaller tank, but I have managed to go further on a tank than I ever have in the Wrangler when it was bone stock on 33s, and definitely not with a lift in 35s. So when it comes to fuel mileage and range, the Bronco does get better gas mileage. Obviously, depending on how you drive them, you might get different results, because that's a big dog. That dude's huge. But again, depending on how you drive, obviously, if you're always in the gas, then yes, you're not going to get very good gas mileage. Depending on where you live, if you live at higher altitude, where those turbos are working to force more air into the cylinders, then your results may vary. But I drive the same in this that I do in my Wrangler, and I get better gas mileage and better range in the Bronco. Now, some other things that might be important to you when you're considering a daily driver and using it on your commute and whatnot might be the technology. And this is a fairly easy one. The Bronco is the newest, so it has all the newest features. It's got 360-degree cameras that are available. You can't get any of that at all, no matter how much you spend on a Wrangler, from the factory. And it's got a 12-inch touchscreen, which is really nice. I mean, it very clear, gives you a lot of information. The cameras are very clear. CarPlay works great, and it's wireless Apple CarPlay, so you can just keep your phone in there. You don't gotta mess with wires. It has a wireless charging pad, which again, with a Wrangler, you can't get. And it's got front parking sensors that are available, which you can't get front parking sensors on a Wrangler. And things like evasive steering assist or lane keep assist, where it will actually tug the wheel to bring you back into the lane. Wrangler doesn't have that. This does. So if that stuff is important to you, the Bronco has it. If not, then, you know, who cares, because the Wrangler doesn't have it either. And then also the next thing that I feel is important when you're talking about a daily driver, something that you use in and out of work, you know, you're going to the grocery store, you're making trips to places, is storage in the vehicle. Neither one of these is very good, but the Bronco does have some extra space up here on the dash where you can set things. There's actually USB ports up there where you can charge things. So the Bronco has a more usable dash area. Now it's still a hard plastic, so stuff might slide around, but it is recessed a little bit to hopefully prevent that from happening. The rest of the interior is fairly equal. The Bronco obviously has the wireless charging pad, which you can set other things there if you just want to keep your phone in your pocket. So that's a plus. But the Wrangler has a little spot designated for a phone or the key fob, whichever one in between the cup holders. And when it comes to the center console, I personally feel like the Jeep's is better because the Jeep has that, you know, that dual layer center console, whereas this has a little divider that you can fit a couple of pins in or whatever, some loose change, and then the storage itself, nothing crazy. They both have those little door nuts. Now I will say on the Bronco, they're a little bit more recessed and they're kind of curved, and at the bottom they curve out a little bit, so if you put a water bottle there, it will rest on that ledge as opposed to just sinking in the net. So there you go. But really, when it comes to interior storage space, there's not a whole lot in either one when it comes to little cubbies and having just gigantic spot to just put things. I think the Jeep slightly edges out because of that center console. So anyways, guys, that's basically kind of a review of everything. If we tally everything up, then from just kind of going over everything in my head here, that I should put the Bronco ahead in terms of daily driving. So again, if you have a Jeep and if you love your Jeep, that's great. You don't need to leave a comment about how wrong I am when you haven't driven a Bronco. So basically, when it comes to on-road daily driving, the Bronco would fit most people's idea of a daily driver a little bit better. Now, if the wind noise is a deal breaker, which I totally understand, then obviously you go for the Wrangler. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it helpful if maybe you're looking at getting one of these and you haven't quite decided yet. And keep in mind that this was specific to my two vehicles, not just in general. This is a Badlands Sasquatch Edition Bronco with 35s. If you get one with different tires and smaller wheels and tires and things, it might be different. If you get a four-door, or if you're getting a Wrangler and you're going to get a Sport, it's going to be different than what I've experienced with my Rubicon. But most things should be pretty similar. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to give it a like. It really helps me out. And also click that little subscribe button and click the bell so you get notified for more videos. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.